There is a village in the mountains of old Anatolia, not on any map you would find today, where the summers came like punishment and the winters like forgiveness. The land was beautiful the way difficult things often are. Terraced fields, pale stone walls, olive trees so old the villagers had stopped counting their years and simply started asking them for advice. At the center of the village there was a well, not a remarkable well by any measure. Stone lip, worn rope, wooden bucket darkened by 1,000 hands. But in a region where rivers turned to dust by midsummer, and the nearest water source beyond it was 2 days' walk, this well was everything. It had never, not in living memory, not in the memory of the oldest grandmother, not in the stories her grandmother had told her, run dry. The villagers accepted this the way people accept most quiet miracles, without much thought. The well was there. The water came. Life continued. There was a blacksmith named Ozan who drew from the well each morning before dawn. A widow named Fatma who came at midday with her grandchildren. A merchant named Selim who filled his cart barrels each week for the road. A priest who blessed the water every Sunday and attributed its abundance, naturally, to God. Children splashed in the overflow. Farmers dragged their livestock to drink. In 40 years, no one had ever arrived and found it empty. The village did not speak about the well very often. Why would they? It had never given them reason to. Then came the traveler. He arrived in autumn, a lean man with road dust on his coat, and the look of someone who had seen too many places to be impressed by any of them. He asked for a meal and a place to sleep, and the elder, a woman named Miriam, white-haired and deliberate in everything she did, gave him both. It was at the evening meal that he said it, quietly, almost as an afterthought, the way the most consequential things are often said. "You know someone is filling that well." Miriam set down her cup. "It's a spring." "There is no spring." He said it without drama. "I've traveled through enough dry country to know. I noticed on my way in. The rock beneath this village is solid limestone. Beautiful for building, useless for water. Whatever is feeding that well is not coming from below." He told her what he had seen. 3 nights he had camped on the ridge above the village before descending. And on 2 of those nights, long after the village had gone dark, he had watched a figure move through the shadows, carrying clay vessels from a stone outbuilding at the edge of the valley. A storage cistern, half buried, invisible unless you knew to look, and pour them slowly into the well before disappearing back inside. He did not know who it was. He could not see clearly in the dark, but he was certain of what he had seen. Miriam sat with this for a long time. In the morning, she called the village together in the square. She told them what the traveler had said, plainly and without embellishment. She watched their faces as she spoke. What she saw troubled her more than the information itself. The blacksmith Ozan frowned and looked at his boots. Selim the merchant crossed his arms. The priest cleared his throat and said gently but firmly that the well had always been there and would always be there. It was simply the nature of this particular place, this particular stone. Several people nodded. A few looked at the traveler with the specific suspicion reserved for outsiders who arrive with stories. Someone said, "Why would one family do this in secret? It makes no sense. If they had water, they would have told us. People tell you when they want credit." Someone else said, "Perhaps the traveler was confused about what he saw. It was dark." The traveler said nothing. He had said what he came to say. Miriam asked quietly, if anyone knew of a family with a storage cistern at the edge of the valley. A long silence. Then, from the back of the gathered crowd, a small movement. An elderly man, a farmer named Hassan, who most people knew only as the one who kept to himself, raised his hand to his chest. Not waving, not announcing, just acknowledging, with his eyes on the ground. People looked at him. Then they looked away. The meeting ended without resolution. It was agreed that the traveler had likely misunderstood what he saw. It was a spring. It had always been a spring. Hassan walked home and said nothing. His daughter-in-law asked him how the meeting went. He said it went fine. He sat down at the table and ate his meal and went to bed early. That night, for the first time in 11 years, he did not go to the well. Nor the next night. Nor the one after that. He was 73 years old. His back had been failing for 2 years. The cistern, built quietly by his father, maintained quietly by him, never spoken of to anyone, had enough reserves for perhaps another 4 weeks if he drew it down carefully. After that, nothing. He had expected to keep going until he couldn't. Now he found he simply didn't want to anymore. The well ran dry on the first morning of December. The village woke to an empty bucket, then another, then the scrape of the rope against stone, and nothing at the bottom but darkness. People gathered around it, confused in the specific way of those who have never had to think about a thing and are suddenly being asked to think about it very urgently. Miriam stood at the edge of the crowd and looked across the square at Hassan's house. He was standing in his doorway, watching. He did not look angry. He did not look satisfied. He looked like a man who had put something down after carrying it a very long time and was still deciding how he felt about his empty hands. She walked over to him. She did not say, "Why didn't you tell us?" or "Why did you stop?" She was old enough to know that both questions answered themselves. She said, "What do you need?" He looked at her for a moment. Then he told her. It took the village 3 weeks to refill the cistern. They carried water from the distant source in relays, every family, every day, until the stores were rebuilt. It was hard work. Several people complained. A few quietly admitted they had not understood before how much effort it took. They never again forgot where the water came from. So, my question to you is this. What in your life have you always assumed would simply be there? The well that never ran dry, and who has been quietly filling it in the dark without asking for anything in return? And have you even once asked them what they need?